My name is Rick Solomon, a friend of the 92nd Y and one of the organizers of this special panel. You are in for a treat, as there is no more timely subject. During a period of extraordinary events that have included a pandemic and historic protests for racial justice, our community is under more stress than ever before. We are fortunate to have Dr. Deborah Marin, director of the new Mount Sinai Center of Stress, Resilience, and Personal Growth, share her insights on how healthcare workers on the front line are guided to weather the challenges of a lifetime, and will suggest coping mechanisms and resilience building techniques to help manage daily stressors and grow from these ongoing traumatic events. Kate Murphy, an acclaimed author and contributing journalist to the New York Times, will interview her. Deborah B. Marin, MD, is board certified in both psychiatry and neurology. Some of her many roles within the Department of Psychiatry at the Mount Sinai Health System include the George and Marion Sokolik Blumenthal Professor of Psychiatry, Director of the Division of Geriatric Psychiatry, and Vice Chair for Education. At the institutional level, she is the Medical Director of the Department of Spiritual Care and Education and Director of the Center for Spirituality and Health at the Mount Sinai Health System. As noted, she is also Director of the new Mount Sinai Center of Stress, Resilience, and Personal Growth, which serves as a resource for enhancing resilience and mental health during and following the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Marin has been consistently listed as one of the best doctors since 1997. She is a recipient of many awards with over 80 publications. Her earlier research was in the area of Alzheimer's disease. She and her colleagues published the first paper demonstrating that patients visited by chaplains were more likely to give higher scores on publicly reported measures of patient satisfaction. Her group is now investigating how religion and spirituality, as well as spiritual care, can have an effect on health outcomes. We are pleased to have Kate Murphy as moderator. A contributor to the New York Times, Ms. Murphy has also written for The Economist, Agence France Presse, and Texas Monthly, among other publications. She is the author of an important and most relevant book for these difficult times, You're Not Listening, What You Are Missing and Why It Matters. Please join me in extending a warm virtual 92Y welcome to Deborah and Kate. Thank you.
I'm Kate Murphy. I'm a journalist and frequent contributor to the New York Times and author of You're Not Listening, What You're Missing, and Why It Matters. And I'm here with Dr. Marin, Director of the Center for Stress, Resilience, and Personal Growth, which was recently launched at Mount Sinai to help employees cope with the impact of COVID-19 on their professional and personal lives. Thank you for being here, Dr. Marin.
My pleasure. I look forward to speaking with you.
Well, I think first, tell me about some of the interventions your center is using to help employees build resiliency and even grow during this difficult time.
So the center actually has a few components, one of which actually is that the employees will have the ability to confidentially assess how they're doing in an app that's just meant for them. And based upon how they're doing, they'll get feedback, whether they're doing well, and if they're not doing well, they'll be given an opportunity to contact us in many ways. In terms of promoting resilience, resilience can be promoted, and we're focusing very much on offering free workshops to employees on the topics related to resilience. Employees will have the opportunity. It's a very open, it's a very active session with adult-based learning, and people are given homework. And if they want some more coaching based upon the homework that they're doing for themselves, we will have social workers who are available to give them advice how to do so.
Well, you know, the term resiliency gets tossed around a lot these days, but I think many people don't have a clear idea what it means. How do you define resiliency? And is it a personality trait or can you acquire it? You said people could promote it, but I guess first, what does resiliency actually mean?
Resilience is the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. One can, the idea about resilience is that there are many arguments about whether it's nature versus nurture, and it's probably both. And in fact, if people do experience some trauma early in life or challenges, they're more likely to be able to handle future challenges, actually. But there are components that one can enhance in resilience, and they're really based upon 10 factors that are frequently mentioned as the core features of making someone resilient.
Mm-hmm. And how can one promote resiliency? So not only they're able to bounce back now, but in the future, they're better able to bounce back in difficult circumstances.
I'll give you a couple examples.
Great.
One example is actually finding what one has one's morals and values and following them. And even though one may have done something that one feels bad about, or for example, healthcare workers may have a lot of moral injury about the fact that they couldn't help their patients, but they can say to themselves, I chose to be a healthcare worker. I did my best. So even though I may have failed, I know my heart was in the right place. That's one example. Another example is giving and receiving social support. Resilience, social interaction and connectivity is a very important part of what promotes resilience. It's been shown in many areas around the world, including POWs even. That's how they kept themselves together as a group. And that means it's okay to ask for help too. People who are able to ask for help when they need it, that's a sign of resilience as well.
Tell me about the concept of 3 good things.
Concept of 3 good things, meaning?
Meaning that was something that you have some wonderful podcasts on your center, on your center's website. And one of the things they talked about was something to help build resiliency and also just to, help people cope is to think about 3 good things that happened. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am. So the idea here is that often at this time, people are very anxious. They may be very stressed. They may be very isolated. But if one can think about 3 good things that make you feel well or what you've done, it can help promote your sense of self. A lot of times people are so hard on themselves, and when people are very anxious, we get flooded with so much anxiety, we can't stop and think rationally. So one just takes a few breaths to calm down and think about positive things. Those thoughts in and of themselves can help our mood.
And, there was something else that I thought was really interesting. I read an interview recently with the comedian Kumail Nanjiani, who starred in The Big Sick. And he voiced what I think a lot of people are feeling. He said he felt like he was a roving ball of anxiety that picks up and fixates on things that he normally would not get upset about. Right. And I wondered if you could talk about the concept of free-floating anxiety and how to manage that.
So at this time, people are anxious about many things. And what's very important is to remember anxiety is just a thought. It's not something physical. So if you think about it, it's just a thought and a feeling. One can do things to combat it. For example, meditation is very helpful. You don't have to meditate a long time. If you can meditate a few minutes twice a day, that can bring down your anxiety. The other thing is if you notice you're obsessing, or I call it having a loop of something that upsets you, stop the loop. You can actually, I say, close the door and think about something else. Distract yourself. But the distraction should not be social media about what's going on in the world. One reason people are very anxious is that they're listening to all these things that are anxiety provoking. And believe it or not, our body is built actually to listen to that. But you have to really diminish it to a level that is doable and workable for you. Some people say 30 minutes or more is not good, for example, during the day. I know we're all junkies of this. I'm aware of it. on the other hand, it's not helpful. So another way to mitigate anxiety is to be physically active. Our brains really like it when we're active. And I know we're stuck in our apartments, but you know what? You can go up and down the stairs if you want, walk up and down the hall if you want. You can make a date with a friend to walk 6 feet apart down the street. These also help with anxiety.
I'm really glad you brought that up about watching the news and following social media, because a lot of people tell me that they get very stressed out looking at it, but at the same time, they can't tear themselves away. Yeah. Should people give themselves, like you say, a precise amount of time that they allow themselves? And how do they measure what is too much?
So there's a lot of literature on the impact of social media, particularly in adolescents, for example. And I said 30 minutes a day for a reason, actually. That seems to be a tipping point. But realistically
Really?
speaking, yeah, it seems to be, if people like 3 hours or more, you're definitely more likely to have a lot of psychological problems because, you know, the thing about social media or just listening to the news, and you're a broadcaster, and, you know, I read the New York Times religiously. The issue is that if you're going to read the news, don't always focus on reading about COVID. Read about something else. Read about your health. Read about travel. You can still learn, but not be focused. It's like folks who watch the Twin Towers coming down over and over and over again. Our brain area that's associated with emotion just lights up, and then we get flooded with anxiety.
Right. That's so hard now because almost all of the news does focus on that, whether even if you are reading about food, it's all about, you know, COVID, you know, some way to, you know, be more hygienic or what you can do while you're locked up in your home. Do you recommend fiction? People read fiction and really get an escape, get a break?
I recommend fiction. I recommend comedy, whatever works for you. I think it's really terrific. I do recommend keeping a schedule. So if you're going to be involved in social media and news, why don't you pick a couple of times of the day to do it? Most people like to in the morning. Don't engage in this stuff in the evening, aside from the fact that it may disrupt your sleep because of the blue light. It will disrupt your sleep. You should say, that's it, I'm done. You know, 7, 8 o'clock at night. It really will help. Have good sleep hygiene. Make sure you don't pick up the phone in the middle of the night. Put it away. I know it's hard to do, but it really does help if you don't use it.
That's really great advice. You know, I also wanted to ask you, a lot of readers have gotten in touch with me to say that they feel like social distancing is making them less social. And what I mean by that is they say that the more time they spend alone, actually the less tolerance they have for others, almost as if they're losing their social skills. Yeah. Is there something to that sort of it atrophies?
It's more the fact that people are isolated. The most examples of that really is actually about quarantine. People who've been quarantined, for example, who are away, have a lot of psychological impact from that. So social distancing should not be social isolation. Mm-hmm. It's very important. This is why I say keep a schedule. I recommend for folks who work remotely from Mount Sinai is you used to take lunch together, have a Zoom lunch together.
Yeah.
You had a water cooler talk at 3 in the afternoon. So being social does take practice. You know, so I think they're probably as social as they were before, but maybe they felt that they can't have as much time. For example, going to the supermarket is a social event for many people. Yeah. You meet people in the lobby. So now people can leave their homes, first of all, but I would definitely recommend trying to get back to schedule as much as possible. Even doing the laundry means something to people. So whatever you haven't been doing, don't negate the importance of these things. Make sure you have a FaceTime or Zoom with your grandchild like you're used to. Even if they're running around, you're seeing them, you're talking with your daughter or son. These are very meaningful events that people can do.
I'm really glad you brought that up about routines, because I'm also hearing about a lot of people who are actually giving up on routines. They can't go to the gym anymore, and they don't have that regular rhythm throughout their day, and it really is throwing them off. So is really the best thing to do is if you can't do it in be in front of people, to do it either virtually or maybe set up a gym in your garage or some way to keep that rhythm in your life existing.
I recommend that people actually make a schedule for themselves, because in this time, schedules don't exist. I would literally write something down, pick when you're going to have for breakfast, write down what you're going to have. The actual event of writing something down helps reinforce the behavior.
Is that something that sort of relates to religion, that sort of rhythm and routine and ritual is something that, you know, throughout the centuries people have done, that actually is something that helps with mental health as well as spiritual health?
So religion is a very interesting phenomenon. People like to congregate. Mm-hmm. And one can be spiritual and not religious. For example, meditation can be one form of religion, or exercising maybe, but congregating is very important. And a lot of times folks who are spiritual are able to give to others more. So I'm using religion and spirituality interchangeably, but many folks may not relate to religion, but they may relate to something that's meaning making. There's folks, by the way, who are individuals who do go to church or some place of worship, actually at least once a week. Large scale studies have shown, for example, nurses who go to church at least once a week are less likely to commit suicide.
That's interesting.
Individuals who are churchgoers are less likely to be drinkers. So it may not be the religion per se. I think part of it is congregating and doing something that's meaning making.
Okay. Now, we've been talking about the effects of isolation. On the opposite end of the spectrum, a lot of people are suffering from too much togetherness because they're stuck home with family members or roommates. And this is another source of stress. So what are your thoughts on that?
Alone time is very important. You know, we tend to maybe want to go all to the living room together. And for some people, unfortunately, this is not possible, and I understand that. I work with folks who are parents of small children, and it's very challenging because the kid can't go out and run around as much as they used to. But I would say, particularly as we're opening up, try to separate some. And if you notice you're getting on each other's nerves, try to remember that this is a very hard time, and try to do something that can create togetherness. I sometimes tell people to do crossword puzzles.
Yeah, yeah.
Or do parallel play, because that's sometimes the most important thing to do. And particularly if you can do something together. It may rekindle a bond that you haven't had for a while because you're so tense about everything.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot.
Thank you. Great questions. And I hope you're well. And thank you very much for taking the time to interview me.